The intergalactic market buzzed with life. Aliens of every shape, size, and color moved through the wide corridors of the station, carrying goods, trading, shouting, and laughing. Ships hovered just above the market, unloading crates of rare metals, glowing fruits, and strange machines from distant planets. The air was filled with scents that made the stomach churn, from sweet alien spices to the sharp tang of molten metals. Among the crowd, a small figure shuffled slowly. It was a dwarf dragon, old and worn, its scales dull and chipped from years of travel and battle. Its wings were folded tightly against its body, and its claws dragged lightly on the metal floor. It carried no luggage, only the weight of its age and scars. Every alien who noticed it stepped back, whispered, or laughed. "What is that thing?" a three-armed merchant hissed. "It looks sickly," said a tall, spindly creature with green eyes. "It will never fetch a credit in this market," muttered another. The dragon kept moving, ignoring the jeers. Its golden eyes scanned the market, tired but alert. It had been everywhere, fought many battles, and survived more dangers than most could imagine. But here, in this market, it was nothing. It was rejected before anyone even saw its value. A group of traders crowded around a booth, loudly haggling over a glowing fruit. One of them noticed a dragon and laughed. "Look at that. An old dwarf dragon wandering among us? What a joke. No one will buy that relic." The dragon lifted its head slightly but did not respond. Its tail flicked lazily, and it let out a small, low rumble that might have been a sigh. It had heard these words before in many languages, from many species. It was used to being ignored, dismissed, and underestimated. In the midst of the chaos, a man watched. He was human, tall, with short brown hair and curious eyes. He leaned against a railing, observing the market with calm interest. Unlike the others, he did not laugh or point at the dragon. He noticed the small creature's cautious steps, the careful way it moved among the larger, bustling aliens. There was something in its eyes, something he could not explain. The man pushed himself off the railing and walked closer. "Hello there," he said softly, so that only the dragon could hear. The creature paused, lifting its head to look at him. It did not roar or hiss, only regarded him with quiet curiosity. "Are you lost?" the man asked. "Or do you belong somewhere else?" The dragon tilted its head slightly. Its breathing was slow, measured, but there was a tension in its body, a coiled readiness that spoke of strength still hidden beneath its small frame. The man knelt slowly, keeping his movements gentle and calm. "I'm not like the others," he said. "I don't judge you. I just want to see who you really are." Other aliens noticed and began to murmur. "Is he talking to it?" "That's foolish," said a purple-scaled trader. Another shook his head. "It's an old dragon. Weak, useless. Don't waste your time." The dragon blinked. No one had spoken to it like this before. Most tried to chase it away, trap it, or ignore it. Few had ever shown interest without fear or greed. This human, small and unthreatening, spoke gently. The dragon's tail swished once, a small sign of acknowledgement. The man examined the collar around the dragon's neck. It was old, scratched, and barely legible, but it had a small metal tag attached. He leaned closer, curiosity pulling him forward. The tag seemed ordinary at first, just a worn piece of metal. But there was something in the design, a faint glow beneath the scratches. "What's your name?" he whispered. The dragon's golden eyes seemed to reflect understanding. It did not speak, but the gaze felt like an answer. A question returned. Around them, the market continued to roar with activity, but a small circle of silence seemed to form. Other aliens watched from a distance, unsure of what was happening. Some snickered, thinking the human was foolish, while others stared, intrigued by the unusual bond forming between man and dragon. The dwarf dragon shuffled closer to man, cautiously. Its old joints protested with tiny cracks and creaks, but it moved anyway. The man reached out a hand slowly, palm open, showing no threat. The dragon sniffed it with a warm breath, scales glowing faintly in the dim market light. "See," the man said softly, "you're not just a relic. You have value. You just need someone to notice it." The dragon's head tilted again, almost imperceptibly. It did not step back. In all the noise of the market, It found a calm presence, someone who did not demand, judge, or mock. Other aliens whispered, confused and wary. Why does he trust it? Is he going to buy it? It's dangerous. The man smiled faintly. Sometimes, the ones everyone ignores are the most important, he said quietly. You've survived long enough to tell a story, haven't you? The dwarf dragon rumbled softly, almost like a reply. Its golden eyes shone brighter for a moment, reflecting a glimmer of pride, recognition, and relief. For the first time in the market, it did not feel rejected. A young alien child, watching from a nearby crate, gasped softly. It's beautiful, they whispered. Their parents scowled, but the child's eyes were wide with wonder. The man gently reached for the tag on the dragon's collar. His fingers traced the worn metal, brushing off dust and scratches. There were markings, ancient symbols he could not immediately read, but he could feel the weight of history beneath his touch. This dragon was not ordinary. It had lived, fought, survived, and endured. It was not just a dwarf dragon. It was something far greater, something the aliens had failed to see. The dragon shifted slightly, leaning into the man's calm presence. It was small, yes, and old, but there was a spark in its eyes that no alien had noticed before. A spark of intelligence, loyalty, and hidden strength. The crowd of aliens began to step back, some whispering among themselves. Why is he treated like that? It's nothing, just a dwarf dragon. No, maybe he sees something we don't. The man smiled again and spoke softly. Don't worry, I see you. That's all that matters for now. The dragon lowered its head slowly, allowing the man to inspect the tag more closely. Its body relaxed just slightly, a small gesture of trust in a world that had repeatedly rejected it. In that crowded, noisy market, something remarkable happened. An old dwarf dragon, worn, scarred, and rejected by every alien species, found a human who did not see weakness, a human who saw value, history, and courage hidden behind age and scars. For the first time in a long time, the dragon did not feel invisible. It did not feel useless. It felt noticed, respected, and understood. The man stood slowly, still holding the tag, and looked around at the buzzing market. Perhaps it's time others learn what true worth is, he said quietly. The dragon's tail swished again, and it made a soft, rumbling sound. Not a roar, not a warning. A sound of acknowledgement, of trust, and of a story about to be told. A story the market had never expected, about a small dwarf dragon, rejected by many, but seen by one human. And in that moment, the market seemed to pause just for them, as if the universe itself was waiting to see what would happen next. The human smiled and whispered, "Let's find out who you really are." The dwarf dragon lifted its head proudly, scales glinting in the fading light, ready to show the world that even the smallest, oldest, and most rejected could carry greatness. The story of the old dwarf dragon had only just begun. The market was still noisy, but a small bubble of quiet seemed to surround the human and the dwarf dragon. Aliens moved around them, speaking in strange languages, their eyes occasionally darting toward the old creature and its unusual companion. Some whispered, some laughed, and some merely stared. But the human, tall and calm, paid no attention to them. He knelt beside the dragon, examining its scales and worn wings carefully. "Your scales are old, and your wings, they've seen a lot, haven't they?" he murmured. The dragon blinked slowly, its golden eyes watching him closely. It did not respond aloud, yet the human could feel the weight of its attention. The dragon seemed to understand that he meant no harm. He reached out slowly and touched a patch of chipped, silvery scale on the dragon's shoulder. The dragon flinched slightly at first, but then held still. Its body was tense, muscles coiled under the skin, but there was no aggression. It had learned long ago how to survive threats. But this human was different. The man's eyes fell to the collar around the dragon's neck. The metal tag dangled from it, worn and scratched, yet faintly glowing beneath the dirt. He carefully brushed it clean, revealing symbols that pulsed softly in the light. Something about the markings was familiar, as if he had seen them in old star charts or ancient texts. "Where did you come from?" he whispered. "Who gave you this?" The dragon lifted its head slightly, tilting to show the tag better. Its eyes reflected intelligence, a quiet curiosity about this human who had not fled in fear. Its tail flicked once in a slow, deliberate motion, a sign of acknowledgement. Other aliens began to notice the interaction. Some muttered, "Is he trying to communicate with it?" Others laughed. "It's just a weak old dragon. He's wasting his time." But the man ignored them. He crouched lower, moving close enough to see the tag clearly. "There's something special about this," he murmured. "I can feel it. You're not ordinary. You've done more than anyone here can understand." The dwarf dragon's chest rose and fell slowly, almost in rhythm with the man's own breathing. There was a connection forming, subtle but unmistakable. It was as if the dragon could sense that this human saw beyond its age and scars. Carefully, the man lifted the tag and examined the markings. They were in an ancient script, one that few could read, but the shape seemed familiar to him. His eyes widened slightly. "These symbols, they belong to the Guardians," he whispered. The dragon's golden eyes widened a fraction, and its tail flicked again. Other aliens noticed a reaction and whispered among themselves. "Did it just recognize something?" one asked. "The tag, maybe it's important?" The man's voice was soft but firm. "Whoever you were, or are, you are not just an old dragon. You are something more. I can feel it." The dwarf dragon lowered its head slightly, allowing the man to examine it closer. Its jaw moved slowly, revealing small, worn teeth. It made a quiet, rumbling sound, almost a purr, as if it were acknowledging the human's words. The man's fingers traced the edges of the tag. "I wonder what story you carry," he said. "What battles you've seen. What worlds you've traveled." He looked up at the crowded market, where aliens continued their business, oblivious to the history in front of them. "They don't know what you are, but I do. I feel it." The dragon shifted its weight slightly, moving closer to him. It did not speak, yet its presence was comforting. Its wings twitched, but not in anger, more like a gentle acknowledgement. The man smiled faintly. "We're going to figure this out," he said quietly. "I'm going to find out who you really are." A small group of aliens had gathered, whispering and pointing. "That human, he's gone mad. Talking to a useless dragon," one hissed. "It won't do anything. Look at it, old, small, tired." The man ignored them, still focused on the dragon. "It doesn't matter what they think," he said softly. "I see you, and that's what counts." The dragon made a small sound, a soft rumble that vibrated through the man's legs. It stepped closer, its head almost touching his hand. There was trust in the movement, a quiet recognition that this human was different from all others. The man studied the tag more closely. Beneath the scratches, he could see faint traces of a symbol, a star surrounded by wings. It was a mark of an ancient guardian force, one that had protected galaxies long, before most current species had even existed. He gasped softly. You're a guardian," he whispered. "You've seen battles no one else could imagine, and they all ignored you." The dragon's tail flicked, and it let out a soft, vibrating rumble. It did not roar. It did not hiss. It simply acknowledged the human's words. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I'm not going to ignore you. I want to know your story. I want to understand." For the first time in what felt like centuries, the dwarf dragon felt seen. Its golden eyes glowed faintly, scales reflecting the market lights. The human had not laughed, had not mocked, had not tried to push it away. He had shown curiosity, respect, and a willingness to understand. The man stood slowly, keeping his eyes on the dragon. "We'll figure it out," he said. "Whatever battles you've fought, whatever worlds you've been to, we'll uncover together." The alien crowd began to murmur more loudly, some skeptical, some intrigued. "Look at it, the tag. Could it really be a guardian?" The dwarf dragon shifted slightly, moving beside the man. There was a subtle pride in its posture, a spark of confidence that had not been there before. It was still old. It was still small. But now, someone recognized its worth. The man knelt beside it again, whispering, "You've been through so much. Rejected, ignored, overlooked, but not anymore. I see you, and that's what matters." The dragon's chest rumbled softly, almost like a contented sigh. Its head lowered just slightly, touching the man's shoulder in a small gesture of trust. Around them, The market continued its chaos, but in that small circle, time seemed to pause. The man studied the tag one more time. "If this is what I think it is," he whispered, "then you've done things none of these aliens could even dream of. And now, maybe it's time they learn your true value." The dwarf dragon blinked slowly, its golden eyes steady on the human. For the first time, it felt that its story might finally be understood. And the human, full of quiet curiosity and determination, knew that uncovering this dragon's past would change more than just their lives. It might change how the entire market, perhaps even the galaxy, saw creatures they had long dismissed. The dragon shifted, curling its wings slightly around itself, a small but proud gesture. It was no longer merely a rejected outcast. With the human's curiosity awakening, a new chapter was about to begin. The market lights flickered above, ships hummed in the distance, and the dwarf dragon and the human stood together. One curious mind had met one extraordinary being, and together, they were about to reveal a story the universe would not forget. The dwarf dragon's faintly glowing tag caught the light. Its secrets were hidden for now, but the human had begun the first step, noticing, understanding, and believing. For the first time in a long while, the old dwarf dragon felt hope. The market buzzed on, but the human and the dwarf dragon stood in a small bubble of quiet. "Lena!" "No, not Lena this time." The human knelt carefully beside the dragon, holding the worn metal tag on its collar. The dwarf dragon, still and alert, watched him with golden eyes that shimmered faintly under the market lights. The man turned the tag slowly in his fingers. Its surface was scratched and faded from time, but something about the symbols etched into it seemed to hum with life. He could not read it completely, but he could feel the weight of history beneath the scratches. It was as if the tag carried not just a name, but a story, a legacy, a purpose. He whispered softly, "What have you been through? What worlds have you seen?" The dragon shifted slightly, leaning closer to the man as if it wanted him to understand. Its wings twitched gently, the faintest flicker of movement that still held power beneath the small, tired body. Around them, aliens continued their business, but they watched from a distance. Their curiosity piqued. Carefully, the man traced the engraved symbols with his finger. One symbol caught his eye, a star surrounded by wings. His eyes widened. This is the mark of the Guardian Fleet," he whispered. "You're not just a dwarf dragon. You serve among the galaxy's greatest protectors." The dragon's tail flicked once, a subtle vibration against the metal floor. Its chest rumbled softly, almost like a hum of acknowledgement. It had been hiding its identity for years, rejected and dismissed by every alien species it encountered. But this human, one of the smallest, frailest creatures in the market, had noticed something others had never seen. Other aliens whispered among themselves. "Did you see that? The tag, maybe it's important," said a spindly blue alien. "No, it's just a small old creature," argued another. But their voices held doubt now. The dragon's aura, though quiet, suggested something powerful, even legendary. The man studied the tag closely, moving it slightly to catch the light. Tiny grooves glowed faintly, as if the tag itself was responding to his touch. He realized that this was not ordinary metal. It carried energy, or perhaps a record of the dragon's past deeds. "This symbol," he whispered, "it shows that you were a guardian. You fought in battles across the stars. You protected worlds. And everyone ignored it. They didn't see who you really were." The dwarf dragon lowered its head slightly, golden eyes fixed on the man. It had been feared, mocked, and abandoned, but now, for the first time, someone had recognized its worth. It was a feeling both unfamiliar and comforting. The man's fingers traced the edges of the tag, and suddenly a soft light pulsed from it, illuminating the dragon's worn scales. A series of images flickered in the man's mind. Fleets of ships, battles in distant galaxies, planets saved from destruction, and creatures that had depended on the dwarf dragon's courage and intelligence. The dragon rumbled softly as if confirming what the man was seeing. It had not spoken, had not roared, had not needed to. The story of its life, its service, and its strength was now visible to someone who understood. The man took a deep breath. "You've done more than all of these aliens combined," he murmured. "You fought wars, saved lives, and yet they all rejected you. The dragon's chest rose and fell slowly, a quiet rumble vibrating in the air. Its eyes softened, the glow of recognition reflecting trust. It had waited for centuries for someone to see it, someone to understand its history and courage. The man glanced around at the other aliens, who were watching with a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. Some gasped quietly. "Could be true," whispered a tall, green-scale merchant. "That old dragon was a guardian?" The man ignored the whispers, focusing on the dragon. "You've earned more respect than they could ever give. They dismissed you because they couldn't see your heart, your courage, your past. But I can." The dwarf dragon leaned slightly closer, resting its massive head near the man's shoulder. It was a gesture of trust, rare for a creature so wary of the universe. Its small body shivered slightly as the realization settled in. Someone finally saw it, not as an old, useless dragon, but as a being of history, strength, and honor. The tag pulsed again faintly, and the man's mind filled with more visions. Ancient ships, glowing runes, and armies guided by the dwarf dragon's intelligence. He whispered, "You've carried so much, and yet you survived. You were rejected, but you endured. You are remarkable." A few of the observing aliens edged closer, unable to resist curiosity. "We should speak to it," murmured one timidly. "Maybe it's not as weak as we thought." But the dwarf dragon did not turn its attention to them. Its focus was entirely on the human kneeling beside it, the one who had noticed the tag, who had felt the story behind it. The dragon knew this human would not exploit its past, would not betray its trust. The man smiled faintly. "I think I understand now," he said. "You are more than what everyone sees. You've been through battles, seen worlds fall, guided armies, and now, maybe it's time your story is told again." The dwarf dragon rumbled, a deep, vibrating sound that filled the small space around them. It was not a roar of anger, but a sound of acknowledgement, pride, and relief. For centuries, it had been rejected, ignored, and underestimated. But now, someone had read its secret, and finally it felt understood. The man leaned closer to the dragon, studying the faintly glowing symbols on the tag one last time. "We'll show them," he whispered. "We'll show them your worth. They have judged you for too long without seeing who you truly are." The dragon shifted slightly, wings twitching as if preparing for something. Though it was old, small, and scarred, the fire of its hidden powers seemed to stir. Its golden eyes locked onto man, a silent agreement passing between them. They would face whatever came next together. A murmur ran through the crowd. Aliens who had dismissed the dragon began to whisper among themselves. Some were skeptical, but others were fascinated. "Do you see it?" one asked. "That tag, it's a mark of greatness. We were wrong." The man carefully tucked the tag back into place, securing it around the dragon's neck. "It doesn't matter what they think," he said softly. "What matters is that I know the truth. And now, maybe we'll show them too." The dwarf dragon lifted its head slightly, golden eyes glowing faintly brighter. There was a spark in its gaze, a quiet promise of what was to come. It had been rejected, ignored, and dismissed by countless aliens, but one human had awakened the secret it had carried for centuries. The man stood, brushing dust from his clothes, and looked down at the dragon. "Are you ready?" he asked. The dragon tilted its head and gave a small, low rumble. It was ready. The market continued to buzz. But in that corner, the dwarf dragon and the human shared a quiet understanding. The secret of the old dwarf dragon had been read, its story uncovered, and a new chapter was about to begin. The dragon's faintly glowing tag reflected the lights of the market as the man smiled. "Let's show them who you really are," he said. And the dragon, small but proud, followed him, ready to reveal the strength and legacy hidden beneath the old, worn scales. For the first time in a long time, the dwarf dragon felt seen, understood, and ready. Its secret had been read. Its courage and history would no longer be ignored. And together with the human who believed in it, the story of the rejected old dwarf dragon was about to change the minds of everyone who had once doubted. The human led the old dwarf dragon away from the crowded market into a quieter part of the space station. The corridors were lined with crates and pipes, and the hum of engines vibrated softly beneath their feet. The man kept a careful eye on the dragon, noting how it moved, cautious yet alert. Even old and small, It carried a weight of power that the crowd could never see. "All right," the man said softly. "We need to see what you can do. Not for anyone else, just for yourself and for me. Can you handle that?" The dwarf dragon's golden eyes glimmered faintly. It tilted its head as if understanding. It did not speak, yet the man could feel the weight of agreement in the quiet room. This was a test of worth, a moment to prove that age and size did not define value. A low rumble vibrated through the dragon's chest. Its wings twitched, not in panic, but in readiness. The human smiled faintly, knowing this dragon had survived battles far more dangerous than any they could face here. First, the man said, "Let's test your senses." He clapped softly, and the dragon's eyes scanned the corridor instantly. He moved his hand slightly to the left, and the dragon's head followed with precision, golden eyes tracking every subtle movement. He tossed a small, glowing orb down the hall. The dwarf dragon reacted instantly, leaping forward with surprising speed for its small, old body. It caught the orb deftly in its claws, holding it securely. The man chuckled softly. "Not bad." He tossed another orb, this one spinning and glowing with a stronger light. The dragon's reflexes were precise. It snatched the orb midair, barely making a sound, and landed gracefully despite the awkward angle. Other humans and aliens, passing by the corridor, paused and stared. "Is that an old dragon?" a tall alien muttered. "It's moving too quickly." The dragon ignored them, focusing entirely on the human's next command. He gestured toward a cluster of crates piled high. "Show me your strength. Don't hurt anything, but show me what you've got." The dwarf dragon flexed its small limbs, and its wings fluttered gently. Then, with a sudden burst, it pushed against a heavy crate, moving a few inches with surprising force. The man nodded. "Good. Now lift this one," he said, pointing to a larger crate. The dragon's small body strained, but it pushed, rolled, and finally lifted the crate slightly, showing that even in age and size, it had hidden strength. A few aliens gasped quietly, whispering to one another. "Did you see that? It's not useless. Maybe the tag really does mean something." The man smiled faintly. "See? You're more than they think. And this is just the beginning." Next, he led the dragon to a simulated obstacle course. Holographic projections of walls, narrow passages, and moving platforms appeared around them. "Agility," he said, "and intelligence. You got both, but let's see how sharp your mind is." The dragon's golden eyes glowed faintly, and it began to navigate the obstacles. Despite its age, it moved with careful precision. It jumped over gaps, ducked under beams, and even figured out a way to use its tail to swing a small lever that opened a blocked passage. The man's eyes widened. "Exactly. You've done this before. You know how to solve problems quickly." A group of aliens who had been watching whispered in awe. "It's thinking like a warrior," one said. Another shook their head. "No dwarf dragon should be able to do that. We were wrong." The man clapped softly. "You got one more test," he said. "Loyalty. Trust. Will you stay with me, even when things get tough?" Just as he spoke, the holographic simulation changed. Alien mercenaries appeared in projection, attacking the corridor. The lights flashed red, warning sounds echoed, and debris simulated falling around them. The dwarf dragon tensed, but did not flee. Its golden eyes fixed on the human. The man held out his hand. "Stay close. We face this together." The dwarf dragon let out a low rumble, then moved to position itself between the man and the approaching mercenaries. Its small claws dug into the metal floor. Wings flared slightly, and it let out a warning hiss that reverberated through the corridor. The holographic mercenaries seemed larger than them, but the dragon did not back down. It leaped and dodged, using strategy rather than brute force. It guided the man safely past obstacles, blocked attacks, and even used its tail to knock simulated enemies away. The human was amazed at how smart and precise the dragon's movements were. Each action was calculated, deliberate, and effective. When the simulation ended, the dragon lowered its head, breathing steadily. It had passed every test: strength, speed, intelligence, and loyalty. The man knelt, placing a hand gently on the dragon's scales. "You've done it," he whispered. "You've proven what I already knew. You're not old. You're not useless. You're incredible. The dragon rumbled softly, a sound that felt like pride mixed with relief. It had carried its secret for centuries, hiding its greatness from a galaxy that refused to see it. Now, with this human who understood, it could finally show its worth. Other aliens who had watched began to step closer, cautiously. We misjudged it, one admitted. It's more powerful than any of us thought. Another nodded. The tag, maybe it really does mean something important. The human stood slowly, brushing off dust from his clothes. You've passed every test, he said to the dragon. And now, maybe it's time the world outside this corridor sees it too. They need to know that size and age do not define value. Courage, loyalty, and skill do. The dwarf dragon shifted slightly, curling its wings around itself but keeping its eyes on the man. Its chest rumbled, soft and steady. It understood. It had been tested, proven, and now it was ready to face the larger world that had once rejected it. The market beyond the corridor was noisy again, but the air around them felt different. Aliens whispered, some skeptical, some in awe. The dwarf dragon had shown strength that belied its small, old body, intelligence that rivaled the best tacticians, and loyalty that could not be broken. The man smiled faintly. Come on, he said. Let's show them the real story behind that tag of yours. They need to understand what they've ignored for too long. The dragon rumbled and followed him, its head held higher, scales glinting faintly in the light. Though old and small, it now carried the presence of one who had proven its worth. Together, the human and the dwarf dragon stepped out quiet corridors and into the busy market, ready to reveal the hidden strength, history, and courage of a creature every alien had once rejected. The tag on its collar shimmered faintly in the light, a symbol of a legacy that had survived centuries. And now, the dwarf dragon was ready to show that true work could never be judged by age, size, or first impressions. The test had been passed, and the world was about to see the greatness it had ignored. The market was alive with the usual noise, but now every eye turned toward the human and the dwarf dragon. Word spread quickly. An old, small dragon had proven its strength, intelligence, and loyalty. Aliens whispered among themselves, some in disbelief, some in awe. Merchants stopped their haggling. Traders froze mid-step, and even security drones hovered closer, curious about the spectacle. The human walked slowly through the crowd, the dwarf dragon following faithfully. Its golden eyes were bright and alert, scales shimmering faintly under the station lights. Though small and old, its presence now demanded respect. Look at it, a tall alien with multiple eyes whispered. It moved those crates, outsmarted that simulation. It's more than we ever imagined. Others nodded. And the tag. The symbols are ancient. I've heard of these guardians. Could it really be one of them? The human reached the center of the market, standing beside the dragon. He gently patted the creature's shoulder. It's time everyone knows the truth, he said softly. The dwarf dragon lifted its head proudly, letting out a low, steady rumble. It was not a roar of anger, but a sound of confidence, a call that demanded attention. The crowd quieted immediately, sensing the significance of the moment. The human stepped forward and raised a hand. This dragon, he said, voice calm but firm, is not what you think. It is not old and useless. It is a guardian, a protector who has fought for galaxies you cannot even imagine. It carries knowledge, courage, and skill beyond what most of us could hope to achieve. The crowd murmured. Some aliens leaned in closer, craning their necks to see the dwarf dragon. Others gasped. A guardian? A young merchant whispered. We rejected it all this time. The dwarf dragon rumbled again, a low vibration that traveled through the metal floor. Its golden eyes scanned the crowd, then returned to the human, acknowledging his words. It was ready to show them its true worth, not through boasts, but through quiet presence, history, and power. The human pointed to a nearby platform where the market's old testing arenas were kept. Show them, he said simply. Show them who you are. The dwarf dragon moved forward carefully, its claws clicking on the metal floor. It leaped onto the platform, demonstrating agility that belied its age. It lifted crates, solved a small puzzle using levers and switches, and even dodged simulated attacks projected from the walls. Every movement was precise, deliberate, and graceful. The crowd watched, wide-eyed. Aliens who had mocked it earlier now gasped and whispered, "It's incredible! All this time, we thought it was nothing." The man smiled. "Do you see now?" he asked quietly to the dragon. "They're learning. They're finally seeing you." The dwarf dragon lowered its head, letting its tail sweep gently across the platform in a proud gesture. It had been ignored, abandoned, and underestimated. But now, the galaxy was beginning to recognize its value. Its scars were no longer marks of failure. They were proof of survival, proof of courage, proof of experience that no market or alien could diminish. A young alien child stepped forward, eyes wide with wonder. "It's beautiful," they whispered. "It's strong, smart, and alive." The human chuckled softly. "Yes," he said, "and it's always been that way. You just have to look closely." The dwarf dragon let out a soft, warm rumble, almost like a purr, and nudged the human gently with its head. It was a sign of trust and appreciation. Together, they had shown that the smallest, oldest, and most dismissed could still carry greatness. The crowd's mood shifted from disbelief to admiration. Aliens who had once mocked the dragon stepped back, some bowing slightly in respect. "We misjudged it," one said quietly. "We should have known better." The human raised his hand again, speaking to the assembly. True worth is not measured by size, age, or appearance. Courage, intelligence, and loyalty are the marks of greatness. This dragon embodies all of them. Let it remind us never to dismiss what we do not understand. The dwarf dragon rumbled loudly, a deep vibration that seemed to echo through the market. The sound carried authority, history, and honor. Every alien present felt the weight of its presence and recognized the truth in the human's words. Merchants who had jeered before now bowed slightly. Traders whispered with newfound respect. Even security drones paused, sensors registering the dragon as a high-value entity, not a nuisance. The man stepped forward and placed a hand gently on the dwarf dragon's shoulder. "You've carried your story for a long time," he said. "Now the world knows. You've been recognized not for what you're thought to be, but for what you truly are." The dwarf dragon lifted its head proudly, golden eyes shining. Its wings twitched lightly, and for the first time in many years, it felt the acknowledgement it had always deserved. The crowd watched in silence, some with tears in their eyes, others simply awed by the presence of being so strong, intelligent, and noble. The man turned the crowd. "Let this be a lesson," he said softly but firmly. "Never judge by appearances. Never reject what you do not understand. The galaxy is full of stories waiting to be noticed, and sometimes the smallest voice or the smallest dragon carries the greatest legacy." The dwarf dragon let out a soft roar, gentle but commanding, and the crowd erupted into applause, cheers, and whispers of admiration. Its story was no longer hidden. Its worth was finally recognized across species and worlds. The human smiled down at the dragon. "We did it," he whispered. "They see you now. They finally see you." The dwarf dragon nudged him gently, a quiet gesture of gratitude. Its old, small body had endured rejection, ridicule, and isolation, but it had survived. It had proven its worth. It had triumphed, not with anger, but with patience, loyalty, and courage. Aliens began to gather closer, some cautiously, others openly admiring the dragon. They offered nods of respect, small gifts, and even words of apology. The market that had ignored it now honored it. The man looked around at the bustling space station. "Your journey isn't over," he said to the dragon, "but you've won something today. Recognition, respect, a story that will be remembered." The dwarf dragon rumbled softly, golden eyes gleaming. It had faced rejection, and now it faced the galaxy with quiet pride. Its scars told a story of survival. Its movement spoke of skill. Its loyalty to the human told of intelligence and heart. Together, they had proven that worth is not always obvious, but cannot be hidden forever. As the sun or whatever distant star lit the station, glinted off its scales, the dragon lifted its wings slightly, a symbol of strength and resilience. The market, the aliens, and the galaxy beyond could no longer ignore it. It had triumphed, and beside it, the human smiled, knowing he had witnessed something extraordinary. A small old dragon, rejected by all, now recognized as a being of true greatness. Its story, long hidden, had finally been revealed, and its triumph echoed across the market and soon across the stars. The dwarf dragon rumbled one last time, a deep, steady sound of victory. It had endured. It had survived. It had triumphed. And for the first time in many years, it felt truly seen, truly respected, and truly recognized. The human placed a hand on its shoulder. "Let's go," he said softly. "The galaxy has much more to learn about you." And together, the dwarf dragon and the human walked forward, leaving the market behind, ready to face the wider universe, no longer rejected, no longer ignored, and finally triumphant.